The DS horror game that had no business working as well as it did is out on the Switch, and with a ton of retro filter options. Let's dive right into a game that feels like a bit of a cross between Silent Hill and Doom 3. Here is my review of Dementium the Ward for the Nintendo Switch, and backwards compatible with Nintendo Switch 2. Story is pretty light here. You play an amnesiac that wakes up in a hospital filled with zombies and monsters, trying to solve the mystery behind the woman and child that keep appearing to him. And that's about it. You get files here and there talking about a murder mystery, but overall, this is about gameplay and atmosphere, with story drops only a couple times across the whole game. With gameplay, this is a first-person survival horror game with shooting and puzzle elements thrown in. Across the game, you'll be exploring the wards of the hospital, trying to make your way through it and fending off monsters that come after you. On the Switch, this version of Dementium is based on the remaster for the 3DS, offering twin-stick gameplay to help it not feel as dated, and a plethora of filters to simulate the original version's graphics and CRT screens. Unlike other horror games, the ward is very linear. Each chapter has you going through a different area that does have rooms you need key codes or items to get into, but you'll rarely have a path that you can go on that doesn't pretty much lead straight to where you need to go. Navigating these areas is using a flashlight, finding items, and defending yourself with various firearms. So many new horror games adopt the idea that you're powerless in your fight and have to run from everything. Even Silent Hill dipped into this when they made Shattered Memories. But this game gives you a plethora of weapons, from a nightstick and various firearms to an optional buzzsaw that will shred through almost anything with hilarious results. The catch is that the ward is extremely dark and you absolutely have to use your flashlight to be able to see anything. Like the original Doom 3, you have to swap between your flashlight and weapons when fighting enemies. It's a bit clunky, but does add to the horror element where you see a zombie in front of you and suddenly you can't anymore when you get the pistol out, having to carefully move or wait for them to come into close view before firing. Both of these elements are the way they are because this was originally made for the Nintendo DS, which could do very little with 3D visuals and power. Like Silent Hill 1 before it, the darkness was intentionally done to allow it to work at all on the original hardware, while adding to the horror aspect of you worrying about what's right in front of you. This makes the game feel a bit dated. There's no way to dash or sprint, getting away from bosses more on hugging walls, and it runs on manual save points, kicking you back to your last hard save whenever you fail. Most of this isn't hard to adjust to when you consider what this game's original hardware was, and the save points are spread around well, at least outside of the very end. Despite the clunk, I found it to be a lot of fun to play. The lack of a brightness toggle makes the whole experience a fun little horror game of moving your flashlight around, showing that it is literally impossible to see without it. And the guns mostly work well, with a reticle to help you during those hard to see moments. The sniper scope's night vision isn't super great, but it works well enough. The horror element I found to be pretty decent as well. I wouldn't call this a scary game, though the beginning hour or so does keep you a bit spooked with how dark it is, and the ambient music that plays during the game is really well done. There isn't that much variety in tracks, but what's there provides a great atmosphere. I only really have one nitpick across the entire game, and it's the finale and its lack of a save point. As I said earlier, the save points are spread around the game in a very balanced way, but the finale involves a tricky gauntlet of fight rooms leading to the final boss, and there's only one save point set before that gauntlet of rooms. Failing the final boss means redoing the entire gauntlet and then re-challenging the boss to try to clear it again. And when the game has enemies that will take out no less than 40% of your health for hitting you a single time, it can get frustrating when they could have just put a save point in the final room for the last encounter. Speaking of the finale, let's dive into content and length, as this is a decently lengthy game for what it is. You can clear it in around 4 in-game hours, though it took me around 5 hours total on stream a couple weeks ago to reach the gauntlet and the finale itself. Next up is presentation, and visually I think the game looks great. There are filters for both modern and retro visuals, essentially letting you simulate how the DS version looked back in the day with a lower resolution, or the smoothed over, crisp and clear visuals of the remaster. Regardless of the filter, I think it just looks great when you're moving the flashlight around and seeing all of those blood-stained walls and hospital beds. Moving on to performance, we get a perfect 60 FPS as is expected. Even back on the Nintendo Nintendo DS, this game ran at 60 FPS. But it's great to have a horror game on the Switch that doesn't need the Switch 2 to boost it up to 60. The game is a little glitchy, but all of the bugs I found were actually beneficial to the player, like the Cleaver boss rematch getting stuck on the elevator door, letting you just attack him at your own leisure, or the AI for the flying head enemies frequently getting stuck on walls going sideways instead of flying at you. Bugs that I found more goofy and entertaining than bad. That brings us to battery life. On the original and light models, Dementium gets around 4 to 6 hours of battery life. The V2 and OLED models get 7 to 9 hours, while the Switch 2 on backwards compatibility gets 4 hours and 35 minutes. In conclusion, Dementium returns to the Nintendo handhelds for the third time, bringing 60 FPS horror to the Switch. Now, the downside, it's got a bit of clunk from its history as a DS game, and the save point placement could have been better balanced towards the end. But if you enjoy retro horror games from before retro horror turned into everything copying the PS1 formula, it's a good little game to creep through the dark and fight off monsters in an abandoned hospital. Reviews to Go rates Dementium the Ward for the Nintendo Switch a 7.5 out of 10. If you'd like to see more unique horror games for the Switch, check out my review of Forgotten Memories. And if you enjoy the content, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one.